Hello everyone, good afternoon and welcome to today's day 3 of AAA revision in हिंदी। आज के हिंदी रिवीजन में आप सबका स्वागत है। ऑल्दो ये एक हिंदी रिवीजन है पर क्वेश्चन एंड एवरीथिंग ये इंग्लिश में ही होगा बिकॉज एग्ज़ाम जो है वो इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज में है, तो विल यूज़ अ मिक्सचर ऑफ हिंदी और इंग्लिश। ओके, नाउ कल हमने पढ़ा ऑडिट रिस्क्स एंड ऑडिटर्स रिस्पॉन्सेस एंड हमने देखा कि वो टाइप के क्वेश्चन कैसे सॉल्व करते हैं, राइट। टुडे वी आर गोइंग टू डू डेफिशिएंसीज, कंट्रोल्स एंड टेस्ट ऑफ कंट्रोल्स। अभी आज का जो टॉपिक है दैट इज़ डेफिशिएंसीज, कंट्रोल्स एंड टेस्ट ऑफ कंट्रोल्स, वो वेरियस टाइप्स में ट्विस्ट कर सकते हैं। फॉर एग्जाम्पल, they can ask you controls and test of controls, they can ask you deficiencies and recommendations, or they can ask you deficiencies, controls and test of controls। तो ये तीनों में वो play around कर सकते हैं। So let's begin with that। So before beginning with deficiencies, controls and test of controls, we will study the concept of internal controls and then solve questions on that. Okay, so let's begin with that। So let's begin with the concept of internal controls। Now what is an internal control? Internal control मतलब एक कंपनी के अंदर कितने सारे कंट्रोल्स हैं। Why will a company have controls? For smooth running of the company। कंट्रोल्स मतलब उतने रेस्ट्रिक्शंस, मतलब कोई भी बंदा कंपनी में जो उसको चाहे वो नहीं कर सकता, एक अप्रोच फॉलो करना पड़ता है, एक रूल बुक फॉलो करना पड़ता है। ओके, दैट इज़ द मीनिंग ऑफ कंट्रोल। इन एवरी कंपनी देयर आर कंट्रोल्स, बट ये कंट्रोल्स चल रहे हैं कि नहीं चल रहे हैं, दैट इज़ मोर इम्पोर्टेंट। कंट्रोल्स होना कंपनी में कोई बड़ी बात नहीं है, बट ये जो कंट्रोल्स है कंपनी में वो अच्छे से चल भी जाने चाहिए। ओके, सो इफ़ द कंट्रोल्स आर वर्किंग प्रॉपरली, अगर वो अच्छे से चल रहे हैं तो द कंट्रोल रिस्क इज़ लो। ओके, और अगर ये कंट्रोल्स ठीक से नहीं चल पा रहे हैं देन द कंट्रोल रिस्क इज़ हाई। सो हम लोग दोनों सिचुएशंस पढ़ने वाले हैं। इफ़ द कंट्रोल्स आर वर्किंग प्रॉपरली दैट मीन्स द कंट्रोल रिस्क इज़ लो, तो ये सिचुएशन में ऑडिटर क्या करेगा। एंड इफ द कंट्रोल्स आर नॉट वर्किंग प्रॉपरली दैट मीन्स द कंट्रोल रिस्क इज़ हाई। ये सिचुएशन में ऑडिटर क्या करेगा। सो लेट्स सी द फर्स्ट पार्ट। इफ़ कंट्रोल रिस्क इज़ लो दैट मीन्स द कंट्रोल्स आर वर्किंग प्रॉपरली, सो द रिस्क इज़ लो। तो अगर ऐसा सिचुएशन है हमारे सामने, तो द ऑडिटर कैन प्लेस मोर रिलायंस ऑन इंटरनल कंट्रोल्स एंड एविडेंस जनरेटेड इंटरनली विद इन द एंटिटी। बिकॉज द कंट्रोल्स आर स्ट्रॉन्ग, तो द ऑडिटर कैन प्लेस मोर रिलायंस ऑन इंटरनल कंट्रोल्स and whatever evidence is generated internally. Okay, he can place more reliance on that। So because of this क्या होगा is the audit strategy and plan वो update कर सकता है to include fewer substantive procedures, मतलब थोड़े ही substantive procedures कर लो। because control तो अच्छे हैं कंपनी में, अच्छे खासे चल रहे हैं, yes, तो हमको कुछ ज़्यादा करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है बिकॉज कंट्रोल इज़ वर्किंग एग्जैक्टली फाइन। तो ऑडिटर को ज़्यादा हार्डवर्क करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है, तो फीवर सब्सटैंटिव प्रोसीजर्स, स्मॉलर सैम्पल साइजेस, ये सब कर सकते हैं। ओके, दैट इज़ इफ़ द कंट्रोल रिस्क इज़ लो। ओके, कंट्रोल रिस्क इज़ लो मतलब कंट्रोल्स आर वर्किंग परफेक्ट इन द कंपनी। तो ऑडिटर क्या करेगा, स्ट्रैटेजी और प्लान को थोड़ा अपडेट करेगा टू रिफ्लेक्ट फीवर सब्सटैंटिव प्रोसीजर्स। Next is if control risk is high, that means the controls are not working properly. तो इसकी वजह से रिस्क हाई है, तो ऑडिटर क्या करेगा? ऑडिटर कैनॉट रिलाई ऑन द कंट्रोल्स, राइट? So the auditor will increase the volume of procedures conducted at and after the year end, increase the level of substantive procedures, in particular the test of detail, increase the locations included in the audit scope, ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा काम करेगा, खुद से कंपनी पे रिलाई नहीं करेगा. Yes, update the audit strategy and plan to reflect additional testing required at the final audit stage, because the auditor cannot rely on controls, because the controls risk is high, controls are not working properly in the company. ठीक है? एक कंपनी में चाहे जितने भी अच्छे कंट्रोल्स हो, बट देर आर सम इनहेरेंट लिमिटेशंस टू दिस कंट्रोल. मतलब कहीं ना कहीं तो प्रॉब्लम थोड़ा सा आता ही है. कितना भी अच्छा होने दो कंट्रोल्स को, फिर भी एक देयर इज दिस पॉइंट वेर इन देर आर लिमिटेशंस ऑफ इंटरनल कंट्रोल. तो क्या है ये एंड वाई डू कंट्रोल्स हैव लिमिटेशंस? तो पहले तो एक कंपनी में कितने भी अच्छे कंट्रोल्स होने दो, बट अल्टीमेटली द कंट्रोल्स आर मेड बाय होम? The controls are ultimately made by human beings, and human beings are always bound to make errors. Human beings are bound to make mistakes. Okay, so कितने भी अच्छे controls होने दो एक कंपनी में, उस पे there are certain inherent limitations. So the first inherent limitation that the auditor faces is human error. कितने भी अच्छे कंट्रोल्स होने दो, अल्टीमेटली दे आर मेड बाय ह्यूमन बींग्स, एंड ह्यूमन बींग्स आर बाउंड टू मेक मिस्टेक्स. एवरी ईयर एन आईफोन इज रिलीज्ड. द ईयर इट इज़ रिलीज्ड इट इज़ नोन एज द बेस्ट फ़ोन टिल डेट. पर उससे अच्छा कुछ और नेक्स्ट ईयर आता है. लाइक लास्ट ईयर्स आईफोन वॉज कंसिडर्ड टू बी द बेस्ट, उससे अच्छा कोई था ही नहीं. तो ये साल दे इंट्रोड्यूस्ड अ टाइटेनियम फिनिश. वैसे एवरी ईयर देयर इज समथिंग, because ultimately it is made by human beings and human beings are bound to make errors. So that is the first limitation of internal control, कि उसको कितना भी अच्छा होने दो, but it has some inherent limitations and one of them is human error. It is ultimately made by human beings and human beings are bound to make mistakes. The second one we have is ineffective controls. मतलब controls do not, that means controls do not work as intended. मतलब हमारे पास एक कंट्रोल है बट दे आर नॉट वर्किंग एज इंटेंडेड. इसका मतलब क्या है? हमने सोचा था कि कंट्रोल ऐसे ऐसे काम करेगा, पर वो वैसे वैसे काम नहीं कर रहा है. मे बी कंपनी को उसको चलाना नहीं आता. हमने तो हमारा कंट्रोल बना लिया है, लेकिन कंपनी उसको अच्छे से यूज़ नहीं कर पा रही. ओके, कंट्रोल्स विच डू नॉट वर्क एज इंटेंडेड. जैसे मैंने सोचा था वैसे वो कंट्रोल काम नहीं कर रहा है ड्यू टू एनी रीज़न. मे बी एम्प्लॉयज़ को वो कंट्रोल को अच्छे से यूज़ करना नहीं आता, या फिर दे आर जस्ट इग्नोरिंग एंड वो लोग वो कंट्रोल यूज़ नहीं कर रहे हैं. सो दैट इज़ इनइफेक्टिव कंट्रोल. द थर्ड लिमिटेशन ऑफ हैविंग एन इंटरनल कंट्रोल इज़ कल्यूशन ऑफ स्टाफ. मतलब क्या? एक दूसरे से झगड़ा. जब भी दो लोग एक साथ एक कंट्रोल बनाते हैं, कंट्रोल कोई एक बंदा नहीं बनाता, बिकॉज इट इज़ अ बिग कंपनी एंड आई कैन नॉट कम एंड से कि मैं एक कंट्रोल बना रही हूँ. इट्स अ रिजल्ट ऑफ मैनी पीपल वर्किंग टुगेदर. तो जब ये कंट्रोल्स बनते हैं तब क्या होता है? 1 सेकेंड. जब ये कंट्रोल्स बनते हैं तो मैनी पीपल कम टुगेदर एंड डिज़ाइन देयर कंट्रोल्स. ओके, तो क्या होता है इस मेरी आइडिया कुछ अलग है, आपकी आइडिया कुछ अलग है, थोड़ी बहुत कहासुनी हो जाती है, या आई डू नॉट लाइक योर आइडियाज़, यू डोंट लाइक माई आइडियाज़. येस, सो देर इज़ देर when two determined people work together on one particular project, there is always a collusion. So that is known as collusion of staff. This is one more limitation of internal control. The next we have is, अभी मैं एक कंपनी में काम करती हूँ. We have been given a task to give ideas, but ultimately the selection of ideas will be done by the management. I am just an employee who is going to give them ideas. वो आइडिया को लेना है कि नहीं इज़ द रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑफ द मैनेजमेंट. तो क्या होगा इस, अगर मेरा कोई पर्सनल इशू है मैनेजमेंट के साथ, दे डोंट लाइक मी और समथिंग लाइक दैट, दे विल पर्पसली नॉट टेक माई आइडिया इवन दो मेरी आइडिया बहुत अच्छी है. इसका क्या मतलब है, दे आर मेकिंग रॉन्ग यूज़ ऑफ देयर पावर. आइडियली उनको क्या करना चाहिए इज़, पर्सनल बात और प्रोफेशनल बात को अलग रखना चाहिए. बट वो लोग क्या कर रहे हैं, just because they don't like me in my personal life, they are not taking my ideas, which is a very good idea. So they are making the wrong use of power that they have. They have a power to select a good idea, but they are making the wrong use of power that they have. What is this known as? The abuse of power by those with ultimate responsibility. They are using the power in the wrong way possible. Okay. Next, use of management judgment on the nature and extent of control it chooses to implement. अभी बहुत सारे कंट्रोल्स है कि कौन से कंट्रोल को लेना है, कौन से कंट्रोल को इम्प्लीमेंट करना है. दिस इज़ कम्प्लीटली मैनेजमेंट्स जजमेंट. Now all the time management का judgment सही नहीं हो सकता. A lot of time management might make mistakes in making judgments. Management might face issues in making judgments. The use of management judgment on the nature and extent of control it chooses to implement. These are the limitations of internal control. अभी internal control के 5 components हैं. Important 5 components of internal control. Components मतलब क्या? Parts of internal control. So what are the 5 parts of internal control? Control environment, risk assessment process, information system, control activities and monitoring. These are the 5 components of internal control. इनसे बनता है एक प्रॉपर इंटरनल कंट्रोल. ओके, अभी ये कंपोनेंट्स का फर्स्ट पार्ट है कंट्रोल एनवायरनमेंट. नाउ व्हाट इज़ द मीनिंग ऑफ द टर्म कंट्रोल एनवायरनमेंट? मतलब क्या? हम जब छोटे थे तब स्कूल से पढ़ा था एनवायरनमेंट मतलब क्या. एनवायरनमेंट मीन्स द सराउंडिंग अराउंड अस. सिमिलरली एक कंपनी के लिए कंट्रोल एनवायरनमेंट मतलब उसके आसपास की चीज़ें विच कॉन्ट्रीब्यूट टू कंट्रोल. ओके, सो एक कंपनी में इंटरनल कंट्रोल है. कंट्रोल एनवायरनमेंट चीज़ें हैं जो ये कंट्रोल के आसपास है. ओके, सो व्हाट इज़ द डेफिनेशन ऑफ कंट्रोल एनवायरनमेंट? गवर्नेंस एंड मैनेजमेंट फंक्शन ऑफ द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. मैनेजमेंट कैसे काम करता है अराउंड द कंट्रोल. What is the governance around the control? After that, attitude, awareness, actions, commitment, participation and philosophy of those responsible for designing and implementing and monitoring internal controls. So basically internal control के आसपास जो भी चीज़ें हो रही है वो सबको बोलेंगे हम control environment. Everything around the controls of the company उनको हम बोलेंगे control environment. I hope that is clear. Next one we have is risk assessment process. What is the risk assessment process in the company? हर एक कंपनी में एक रिस्क असेसमेंट प्रोसेस रहता है. मतलब अगर कंपनी में कोई रिस्क आता है तो उसको आइडेंटिफाई कैसे करेंगे और उसको सॉल्व कैसे करेंगे. पहले तो यू हैव टू ईदर एलिमिनेट इट कम्प्लीटली और यू हैव टू रिड्यूस इट टू एन एक्सेप्टेबल लेवल. तो टू एलिमिनेट इट कम्प्लीटली मतलब उसको कम्प्लीटली ख़त्म कर देना या फिर उसको इतना रिड्यूस करना कि वो दिखे ही ना. इसके लिए यू नीड टू हैव अ प्रॉपर प्रोसीजर. क्योंकि एक डेली लाइफ में, एक बिज़नेस में बहुत सारे रिस्क आते हैं। तो कैसे आप एक रिस्क को आइडेंटिफाई करोगे, कैसे उसको एसेस करोगे एंड उसको फिर आप रिस्पॉन्ड कैसे करोगे, दैट इज़ अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग दैट एवरी बिजनेस रिक्वायर्स। रिस्क को आइडेंटिफाई करना ही अपने आप में एक बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज है, बिकॉज आपको रिस्क ऐसे ऊपर से नहीं दिखेगा, इतने ईजीली नहीं दिखेगा। रिस्क इज़ मे बी इन डेप्थ। विथ योर एक्सपीरियंस यू शुड फाइंड आउट एंड डिग डीप इन टू दैट रिस्क। ओके, तो पहले तो आपको आइडेंटिफाई करना पड़ेगा विद अ लॉट ऑफ योर एक्सपीरियंस। आप कैसे उसको ढूंढ निकालती हो कि भाई ये रिस्क है मेरे बिजनेस में, इसके वजह से मेरे को लॉस हो रहा है। तो पहले तो आपने वो आइडेंटिफाई किया, राइट। फिर एसेस किया। एसेस मतलब क्या, व्हाट इज़ द लाइक्लीहुड ऑफ द रिस्क, कितना रेगुलरली अकर होता है, मुझे उसको बाहर निकालना है, स्टडी करना है मुझे, यस। एंड देन मैं उस रिस्क को एक रिस्पॉन्स दे दूँगी। आई विल रिस्पॉन्ड टू दैट रिस्क। सो दिस इज़ द रिस्क असेसमेंट प्रोसेस। Third one we have is information system. What is the information system? मेरे पूरे कंपनी में कंट्रोल का सिस्टम, कंट्रोल्स इंफॉर्मेशन सिस्टम, all procedures and records relevant to the financial reporting and communication. क्या प्रोसीजर्स मैं फॉलो करूँगी टू रिपोर्ट अ ट्रांजैक्शन, क्या प्रोसीजर मैं फॉलो करूँगी टू कम्युनिकेट अ ट्रांजैक्शन, दैट इज़ ऑल इंफॉर्मेशन सिस्टम। द फोर्थ एस्पेक्ट और द फोर्थ कंपोनेंट ऑफ माई इंटरनल कंट्रोल इज़ द कंट्रोल एक्टिविटीज़। एक्चुअली एक इंटरनल कंट्रोल में मैं क्या एक्टिविटीज़ परफॉर्म करूँगी, तो मैं क्या करूँगी, आई विल कंडक्ट एक्टिविटीज़। कंट्रोल मतलब क्या, एक कंपनी को रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशन से बांध के रखना। तो ये कंट्रोल में मैं क्या क्या परफॉर्म करूँगी जिससे मेरी कंपनी एक रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस में बंधी हुई रहे। तो पहले मैं करूँगी ऑथराइजेशन। तो किसी को अगर कोई खर्चा करना है तो वो डायरेक्टली नहीं कर सकता, मुझे आके पूछना पड़ेगा, मेरे से ऑथराइजेशन लेना पड़ेगा। कंपेरिजन्स, constantly compare your company with a competitor to see where you stand and accordingly change your results. Computer controls और IT controls, मतलब कंप्यूटर के बेस पे कंट्रोल्स, लाइक कंप्यूटर पासवर्ड प्रोटेक्टेड है, किसी के पास पासवर्ड नहीं है, सिर्फ मैनेजर के पास है। तो अगर आपको कंप्यूटर एक्सेस करना है तो आपको मैनेजर से पासवर्ड लेना पड़ेगा। सो दिस इज़ वन मोर कंट्रोल एक्टिविटी जिससे मेरा कंट्रोल कंपनी का बंधा हुआ रहे। देन नेक्स्ट इज़ arithmetical controls, that is mathematical controls, maintaining trial balance and ledger account, reconciliations. While preparing the trial balance and ledger accounts मैं कुछ भी नहीं लिख सकती, जो मेरे हाथ में है उतना ही मैं कर सकती हूँ। physical controls and segregation of duties, तो ये सब एक्टिविटीज़ मैं परफॉर्म करूँगी इन एन इंटरनल कंट्रोल ऑफ द कंपनी। एंड लास्ट बट नॉट द लीस्ट इज़ मॉनिटरिंग। एक बार मैंने कंपनी में कंट्रोल्स कर दिया, सो दैट इज़ नॉट इट। ऐसा नहीं है कि एक बार मैंने कंट्रोल्स बनाया अब ठीक है अब जाओ, नो। एक बार मैंने कंट्रोल्स बनाया, फिर वो चल कैसे चल रहा है मुझे कांस्टेंट मॉनिटर करना पड़ेगा उसको। एंड वाइल मॉनिटरिंग इफ़ आई फाइंड एनी एरर्स इन दैट देन आई हैव टू रीपरफॉर्म देम। ओके, if I find any errors then I have to repair them. I have to make sure that the internal controls जो मैंने बनाए हैं वो स्मूथली चल रहे हैं, और to make sure कि मेरे कंट्रोल स्मूथली चल रहे हैं कि नहीं, I will constantly monitor them. Okay, so assessing the effectiveness of controls over time and taking remedial actions. So these are the key components of internal control. Now these components are further explained in detail. देन हमारे कंपनी में एक सिस्टम है, ओके, दैट इज़ द इंटरनल कंट्रोल सिस्टम। अभी ऑडिटर को ये सिस्टम को डॉक्यूमेंट करना है। व्हाट इज़ द मीनिंग ऑफ डॉक्यूमेंटिंग अ सिस्टम? दैट मीन्स डॉक्यूमेंटिंग का मतलब है, व्हाट इज़ डॉक्यूमेंटिंग? recording a system. Now when the auditor comes into the company, वो उन्होंने आपका सिस्टम देख लिया, अभी उनको ये सिस्टम को रिकॉर्ड करना है in the books of accounts. Now while the auditor wants to record the system, he has various methods by which he can record your system. उसके पास एक मेथड नहीं है, उसके पास मल्टीपल मेथड्स है जिससे वो आपका सिस्टम रिकॉर्ड कर सकता है. What are the various methods? One is narrative notes, one is flow charts, organization charts, internal control questionnaire, internal control evaluation questionnaire. ये 5 ways से you can document internal control system. So when an auditor comes into the company, he wants to know how your system works and he wants to record it. So to record that system in the books, to document it, he has ways. तो पहला वाला जो है narrative notes, उसमें वो क्या करेगा? He will see your system, he will ask the employees कि कैसे चलता है ये system, एंड जो भी एम्प्लॉयज़ उसको बोलेंगे वो सिर्फ लिखता जाएगा 10 pages, 15 pages, 20 pages about the system. So what is narrative notes? A written description of the system showing what happens and the controls operating at each stage. हो गया, वो सिर्फ लिखता जाएगा. सेकेंड सिचुएशन में ऑडिटर एम्प्लॉय को पूछेगा अपने इंटरनल कंट्रोल्स के बारे में, एंड जो भी एम्प्लॉय बोलेगा वो ध्यान में रखेगा और फिर उसका एक डायग्राम बनाएगा. इंटायर कंट्रोल का एक बड़े पेज पे डायग्राम बनाएगा. व्हाट इज़ दैट? फ्लो चार्ट. दैट इज़ अ डायग्रामेटिक रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ अ सिस्टम. सो दैट इज़ फ्लो चार्ट. देन थर्ड, ऑर्गेनाइजेशन चार्ट. व्हाट इज़ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन चार्ट? वो फ्लो चार्ट ही बनाएगा, सब एम्प्लॉयज़ का सुन के वो फ्लो चार्ट ही बनाएगा, पर वो फ्लो चार्ट में ही विल ऑल्सो इंक्लूड रिपोर्टिंग लाइन्स, रोल्स एंड रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी. मतलब कौन से बंदे का क्या रोल है, कौन से बंदे का क्या रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, एंड हु विल ही रिपोर्ट टू. सो दे विल मेक डायग्राम शोइंग रिपोर्टिंग लाइन्स, रोल्स एंड रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज़. ओके, सो नरेटिव नोट्स हो गया, फ्लो चार्ट्स हो गया, ऑर्गेनाइजेशन चार्ट्स हो गया. नेक्स्ट वी हैव इज इंटरनल कंट्रोल क्वेश्चनर. व्हाट इज़ द मीनिंग ऑफ इंटरनल कंट्रोल क्वेश्चनर? इसमें क्या होगा इस ऑडिटर एक क्वेश्चनर बना के आएगा, उसमें 2 ऑप्शंस होंगे, येस और नो, एंड द ऑडिटर विल गिव दैट क्वेश्चनर टू द मैनेजमेंट, एंड उसमें बहुत सारे क्वेश्चंस होंगे ऑफ वेरियस कंट्रोल्स. If the management has that control in the company, the management will tick yes. And if the management doesn't have that control in the company, they will tick no. So auditor अपने एक पहले ही क्वेश्चनर बना के लाएगा, ऐसा क्वेश्चनर होगा, एंड अगर मैनेजमेंट के पास है वो तो मैनेजमेंट विल टिक yes. अगर मैनेजमेंट के पास नहीं है, मैनेजमेंट विल टिक no. Okay. Then next we have is internal control evaluation questionnaire. मतलब क्या? ऑडिटर कुछ क्वेश्चंस बना के आएगा. वो क्वेश्चंस कैसे होंगे पता है? ऑडिटर विल आस्क द मैनेजमेंट what controls they have in place for a given objective. तो internal control evaluation questionnaire में ऑडिटर विल राइट वेरियस ऑब्जेक्टिव्स एंड ऑडिटर विल आस्क द मैनेजमेंट, ये ऑब्जेक्टिव के लिए मुझे बोलो आपके पास कौन सा कंट्रोल है. सो व्हाट इज़ द डिफरेंस बिटवीन द टू? In internal control questionnaire, the management has to just tick yes or no if they have the control or if they don't have the control. And in evaluation, situation will be given to them. They have to tell which control they have for that situation. Okay? And checklist is same like internal control questionnaire and evaluation questionnaire where you have to just tick the boxes. Okay? These are the various ways of documenting the client. Narrative notes, flow charts, organization charts, internal control questionnaire and internal control evaluation questionnaire. Okay? Abhi, this was the revision of your internal controls. Now we're going to do sums on internal controls. Before that, we take a break of 5 minutes. So now let's begin with the questions. So now these questions have to be done from your study hub only. So let's do those questions. This is my ACCA study hub. Yesterday I did questions on audit risks and auditors' responses. Now I'm going to do it on internal controls. Yeah, so internal controls. These are the commonly asked questions, okay? So we're going to do it here like yesterday. Swift company. Now as I told you, कल भी मैंने आपको बोला था, आज भी फिर से बोल रही हूँ, जब भी आप एक क्वेश्चन कर रहे हो पहले तो रिक्वायरमेंट्स करो, रिक्वायरमेंट्स को पढ़ो पहले, फिर क्वेश्चन को पढ़ो कि आपको समझ में आए कि क्वेश्चन में एग्जैक्टली बोला क्या है, एंड उसके बाद फिर से आओ रिक्वायरमेंट्स में. तो चलो वही फॉलो करते हैं. पहले तो पढ़ते हैं रिक्वायरमेंट्स, देन करते हैं क्वेश्चन, एंड देन वापस आते हैं रिक्वायरमेंट्स में. ओके, सो लेट्स डू दैट. पहले करते हैं रिक्वायरमेंट्स. Requirement part A. For each of the three methods identified in the table, describe the method for documenting internal control systems and explain an advantage of using this method. So you have three methods that they have given. They have narrative notes, they have flowcharts, and they have questionnaires. And for each method, you have to give a description of the system and an advantage of the same. Okay, that is for 6 marks. And then B, in respect of the internal control system of Swift company, identify and explain 7 direct controls on which the auditor may plan to rely, and describe a test of control the auditor should perform to determine the operating effectiveness of each of these controls. Okay, so 7 controls identify करना है, direct control strengths, and test on how if the controls are working effectively or not. अभी एग्ज़ाम में ये टेबल आपको ऑलरेडी दिया जाएगा, यहीं पे टाइप करना है, बट नाउ दिस टेबल इज़ नॉट अवेलेबल, वी कैन नॉट ड्रॉ इट योर, सो वी आर गोइंग टू डू इट इन लाइन. सो लेट्स प्लान द आंसर. अभी बिफोर प्लानिंग द आंसर, क्वेश्चन के 2 रिक्वायरमेंट्स है, रिक्वायरमेंट ए एंड रिक्वायरमेंट बी, वेयर रिक्वायरमेंट ए इज़ कम्प्लीटली इंडिपेंडेंट ऑफ द क्वेश्चन. मतलब क्या, ये रिक्वायरमेंट में अगर मैं क्वेश्चन ना भी पढ़ूँ तो भी मुझे आता है, बिकॉज मुझे आता है नरेटिव नोट्स का डिस्क्रिप्शन और एडवांटेज. अरे ये मुझे क्वेश्चन में मिलेगा भी नहीं, बिकॉज दिस इज़ एन इंडिपेंडेंट रिक्वायरमेंट. तो मेरे को खुद को ये जो मैंने स्टडी किया है उसको सिर्फ रीप्रोड्यूस करना है. ओके, दैट इज़ एन इंडिपेंडेंट रिक्वायरमेंट. और ये जो सेकेंड रिक्वायरमेंट है दैट इज़ अ डिपेंडेंट रिक्वायरमेंट. इसके लिए मुझे क्वेश्चन को पढ़ना पड़ेगा. तो without reading the question, let's solve the A part. Yes, so start solving the A part. I will just get in that. Okay, so let's begin with the same. Plan answer. This is A. One and two. Okay. Abhi the first one that they have given us is narrative notes, then flowcharts, and then questionnaires. So narrative notes, right? बेस का मुझे लिखना है डिस्क्रिप्शन एंड एडवांटेज, तो मैं लिखूँगी डिस्क्रिप्शन, पहले तो मैं लिखूँगी डिस्क्रिप्शन. सो व्हाट इज नरेटिव नोट्स? रिटन डिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ द सिस्टम. यस, सो नरेटिव नोट्स consist of a written description of the system. Okay, written description of the system, you have to literally write all the details that happen in the system. So they detail what occurs in the system at each stage and include details of any controls which operate at each stage. मतलब ईच स्टेज में व्हाट कंट्रोल्स द कंपनी हैज़, उसका एक रिटन डिस्क्रिप्शन लिखना पड़ेगा. ओके, रिटन वे में उसको लिखना पड़ेगा. नाउ द डिस्क्रिप्शन इज डन. नाउ यू विल राइट द एडवांटेज ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर सिस्टम. सो हेडिंग एडवांटेज. व्हाट इज़ द एडवांटेज ऑफ नरेटिव नोट्स? पहले तो जो भी एम्प्लॉयज़ बोलेंगे आपको सिर्फ लिखते जाना है. So it is simple to record, and it is simple to record and also simple to understand. You need not have a degree to understand the written description of narrative notes, क्योंकि वो सिर्फ एक written system है, आपको सिर्फ पढ़ते जाना है और उसको समझना है. You do not require a rocket science degree to understand a written description of the system. So that is the advantage. तो पहले तो they are simple. To record. After discussion with the staff members, so whatever the staff member tells you, you just go on writing. So they are simple to record. After discussion with the staff members, these discussions are written up as notes. Okay, and second, what I told you, easy understanding. Yes, so they facilitate understanding by all members of the audit team and especially the junior members. So especially more junior members who might find alternative methods too complex. That means some people cannot read a diagram. They find it difficult कि अरे क्या ड्रॉ किया है, कैसे ड्रॉ किया है, हमको नहीं पता कैसे पढ़ना है. But when you have a written description of the system, they just have to read through it. So when they have to read through it, they just उनको सिर्फ पढ़ना है और उसको समझना है. So that is easier for them to understand. Okay, so narrative notes हो गया. फिर second one क्या है? Flow charts. That is a diagrammatic representation of a system. Flow charts. ये पहले तो इसका description. Okay, so what will be the description of flow charts? It's a diagrammatic representation. So flow charts are a diagrammatic representation of the internal control system. Okay, it's a diagrammatic representation of internal control system. अभी फ्लो चार्ट में क्या यूज़ करते हैं? वी यूज़ लाइन्स यूजुअली टू डेमॉन्स्ट्रेट द सीक्वेंस ऑफ इवेंट्स. तो जब हम एक फ्लो चार्ट बनाते हैं तो वी डू स्टेज नंबर 1, देन वी यूज़ लाइन्स टू कम टू स्टेज नंबर 2, then again we use lines to come to stage number 3. So it is like a diagram that we draw. And my students who are attending the live from my classes know that we prepare a diagrammatic representation of almost everything that we study, so that we remember it together, and now so that we remember it rightfully. And now when we study the advantage of that, you will understand why I tell you to draw diagrams of everything. So lines usually demonstrate the sequence of events and standard symbols are used to signify controls or documents. Okay, so what is the advantage of this? Looking at the presentation of the answer, आप presentation को देख रहे हो तो जो भी चेक कर रहा है वो easily marks दे पाएगा. So for narrative notes, description has 1 mark and advantage has 1 mark. तो अगर आप ये अलग अलग अच्छे से लिखते हो, जो कि एग्ज़ाम में आपको तो वो डायग्राम में लिखना है, so you know when you write it separately, it's easier to give 1 mark. अभी एडवांटेज क्या है फ्लो चार्ट का? इज़ दैट जब मैं एक नरेटिव नोट बनाती हूँ तो अबाउट द इंटरनल कंट्रोल सिस्टम मैं सिर्फ लिखते जाती हूँ. सो से फॉर एग्जांपल मैंने 15 पेजेस लिखा या फिर 30 पेजेस लिखा, वो सब पढ़ने में और एक सिस्टम को अंडरस्टैंड करने में बहुत वक्त जाएगा. जबकि अगर मैंने फ्लो चार्ट से एक्सप्लेन किया तो वो एंटायर सिस्टम में एक बड़े से पेज पे डायग्राम के द्वारा दिखा सकती हूँ. So it is easier to view the entire system on a page rather than reading those 30 pages. If you have two options, read the entire chapter or see the flow chart, what will you do? You will see the flow chart because it's easier to understand the entire diagram on one page, right? So flow chart becomes easier like that. Also, मैंने जो 30 पेजेस लिखा है नरेटिव नोट्स ऑन इंटरनल कंट्रोल्स, उसमें अगर कुछ मिसिंग है तो भी आई कैन नॉट आइडेंटिफाई दैट, बिकॉज 30 पेजेस मैं कब पढ़ूँगी, कब मैं आइडेंटिफाई करूँगी, इट्स अ बिग प्रोसेस. लेकिन अगर डायग्रामेटिक रिप्रेजेंटेशन में अगर मेरा कुछ छूट भी जाता है कोई पार्ट, आई कैन ईजिली आइडेंटिफाई दैट बिकॉज ये पूरा डायग्राम मेरा एक पेज पे आता है. तो इफ़ देर इज़ एनी डेफिशिएंसी और if there is any missing control, I can identify it just like that. Okay, so that is the advantage of having a flow chart. So write down advantages with flow chart. It is easy to view. The system entirely as it is all presented together in one diagram. Okay. And one more advantage I told you, any missing controls can be identified fast. So due to the use of standard symbols for controls, it can be effective in identifying missing controls. ओके, तो ये एक हो गया एडवांटेज. अभी नेक्स्ट वन क्या है? क्वेश्चनर्स. अभी कौन सा क्वेश्चनर वो उन्होंने स्पेसिफाई नहीं किया है, इफ़ इट इज़ एन इंटरनल कंट्रोल क्वेश्चनर और इफ़ इट इज़ एन इंटरनल कंट्रोल इवैल्यूएशन क्वेश्चनर. तो इस सिचुएशन में हम क्या करेंगे? we'll write about both. Okay, so next heading, questionnaire. Now description of that. So write out about both. Okay, description of both. So internal control questionnaire or internal control evaluation questionnaire contain a list of questions for each major transaction cycle. Now the difference between the two. In internal control questionnaire, you ask the management if you have this control or no. So tick right if you have it, tick cross if you don't have it. And in questionnaire, you give a situation to the company and you tell them, for this situation, to combat this situation, what controls do you have? So write down that. ICQs, that is internal control questionnaires, are used to assess whether controls exist, whereas internal control evaluation questionnaires assess the effectiveness of controls in place. Okay. Now the advantage of this. Questionnaires are quick to prepare, right? Management can easily prepare them. Are quick to prepare, which means they are a timely method of recording the system. Okay, one advantage. And in internal control questionnaire, you're asking the company, do you have this control or no? Yes or no? Yes. And in evaluation, you're asking them what control you have in place for a situation. In both the cases, if the company doesn't have a control, it gets easily highlighted. So with these methods of ICQ and ICEQ, missing controls can be easily highlighted. So next advantage. in ICQ and missing controls are clearly highlighted. By the audit team. Okay, so that is with the questionnaire. So the first part is done for 6 marks. Description of the 3 methods and the advantage of the same. Now we have the B1 and 2. Now in this, what happens? Again, in the question in the exam, if you remember the first day I showed you, there is always already a table ready. You just have to put things in the table. Okay, so you will already have a table of direct controls and test of controls. Even if you don't have a table, there upstairs, in the bar above, आपके पास option है to draw the table. But यहाँ पे वो option नहीं है, maybe because the study hub is new. Maybe they will incorporate it. So 7 direct controls and test of controls. So write down your direct controls and test of controls. What is test of controls? Testing if the controls are working appropriately or so same like yesterday. First you have to write a heading, then you have to write the control, and then you have to write the test of controls for the same. Okay, so for that we have to read the question. We haven't still read the question. So coming back to the question, Swift Company, it is 1 July 20x5. Swift Company prints books which it sells online and supplies to retailers across the country. The company's year end is 30th September 20x5. You are an audit supervisor with Tokan and Company, preparing the draft audit programs and reviewing the internal control documentation in preparation for the interim audit. Payroll. Swift Company employs factory staff who are required to work a standard shift of 8 hours per day. When I say read the question, don't just read it, understand it. No staff members are required to work overtime. All staff members are paid monthly by bank transfer. The company has a HR department which is responsible for setting up all new joiners and a payroll department which processes wages and salaries. When a new employee joins the company, HR completes a joiner's form which includes a unique employee number for each new employee. The joiner's form is then sent to the payroll department so that the new employee can be set up for payment. The unique employee number must be entered into the payroll system before the employee can be added to the payroll. On a monthly basis, an exception report relating to changes to the payroll standing data is produced and reviewed by the payroll manager who evidences this review. How do you evidence a review? Means give your stamp that yes, I have reviewed it. Evidence is a proof. How will you give a proof that you have reviewed it? Please put it in the comments. The review is evidenced by a signature. Okay. Employee hours worked and their hourly wage rates are preset into the system, which automatically calculates the gross and net pay along with relevant deductions and generates employee payslips. The payroll supervisor selects a sample of payslips, reperforms the gross to net pay calculations, and investigates any discrepancies. The sampled payslips are then signed as evidence of this review. Next we have is purchases. The company has a purchasing department based at its head office. When raw materials are required, the production supervisor submit a requisition form to the purchasing department. A multi-part purchase order is generated and the purchasing manager authorizes all orders up to $5,000. But any orders above $5,000 are authorized by the purchasing director. Whenever it's dollars in the answer, you have to write dollars. Any amount, whatever this thing is, you have to mention that. The warehouse team processes goods received from suppliers. They agree the goods received to the purchase order and check the quantity and the quality of the goods. On completion of those checks, a goods received note (GRN) is produced. One copy of the GRN is then signed and filed in the warehouse. Another copy of the GRN is sent to the finance department. A payables clerk logs the purchase invoice in batches of 20 into the detailed purchases listing utilizing control totals. A batch control sheet is completed for each set of 20 invoices and the clerk signs to evidence the checks undertaken. Supplier statement reconciliations are performed on a monthly basis. All differences are fully investigated and the financial controller reviews these reconciliations. Invoices are paid in accordance with the supplier credit terms. The finance director authorizes the bank transfer payment list for suppliers having first agreed the amounts to be paid to supporting documentation and having reviewed the list for duplicate payments. Auditors are required to document a company's accounting and internal control system as a part of their audit process. 3 methods available for documenting internal control systems are narrative notes, flowcharts, and questionnaires. Okay, before we start it, just give me 1 minute. I'll just come. Okay. So let's start now from starting. The first one, if you see, the question starts from here, okay? So Swift company employs factory staff who are required to work a standard shift of 8 hours per day. No staff members are required to work overtime. All staff members are paid monthly by bank transfer. Okay, good. Now the company has a HR department which is responsible for setting up all new joiners. HR department decides on who they should give the job to and who they should not. And a payroll department which processes wages and salaries. So see, there is a segregation of duty. HR will select people and set them. Payroll will pay them. इससे क्या होता है अगर एक ही बंदा ये दोनों काम कर रहा है तो they can set up fake employees on the system, dummy employees on the system, and they can confiscate this money. They can make wrong use of the company's money. So 2 अलग departments कर रहे हैं, right? So segregation of duties reduces the risk of having fictitious employees in the system. So that is the first point. And test of control matlab, as an auditor, ये सब आपको मैनेजमेंट बोल रहा है कि हम ऐसे कर रहे हैं, हम वैसे कर रहे हैं, पर आप कैसे मानेंगे वो? एज एन ऑडिटर आप नहीं मानोगे, बिकॉज यू विल डू योर ओन रिसर्च, यू विल एक्सरसाइज प्रोफेशनल स्केप्टिसिज्म, और आप अपना खुद का रिजल्ट, यू विल गिव योर ओन रिजल्ट. सो हाउ विल यू टेस्ट दिस? You will find out, you will review the job description of the payroll and job description of the HR, कि भाई HR क्या करता है and payroll क्या करता है. Okay, so let's begin with this particular answer. Okay, the first point is segregation of duties. Okay, Swift company has a separate HR department. First write down the issue, then write down इससे क्या होगा. Okay, so what is the issue? They have a separate HR department which is responsible for setting up all new employees. इससे क्या होगा? Having a segregation of roles between HR and payroll departments reduces the risk of fictitious employees. Fictitious means fake, being set up and also being paid, which would result in overstatement of payroll costs. Okay, now as an auditor, how will you make sure and how will you test that this control is happening properly? So आप क्या करोगे? T means test of control. Okay, so how will you test if the control is working properly? You can review the job description of HR and payroll and see if their description matches what they're doing. So write down, review the job descriptions of payroll and HR to confirm the split of responsibilities with regards to setting up new joiners. Okay, and one more thing what you can do is, see, the new people are appointed by HR, yes, but they are paid by payroll. Instead of doing all this, go and ask one new joiner only, no? एक नए जॉइनर को पूछो कि आपको एम्प्लॉय किसने किया है. हिज आंसर शुड बी HR. एंड आपको पे कौन कर रहा है? हिज आंसर शुड बी पेरोल. तो जाके एक जॉइनर को ही पूछो. ओके, सो सेकेंड पॉइंट इज डिस्कस with members of payroll department the process for setting up new joiners and agree new joiners to documentation initiated by HR. Okay, so this will give you 2 marks, one for this and one for the test of control. Then second one, when a new employee joins the company, HR completes a joiner's form which includes a unique employee number for each new employee. Okay, so there is a unique employee number for every employee and the joiner's form is then sent to the payroll. So पहले तो वो बंदे को select करते हैं, उसको एक unique number देते हैं and then the form is sent to payroll for making the payment. The joiner's form is then sent to the payroll department so that the new employee can be set up for the payment. मतलब उसको salary देना पड़ेगा ना. So before that you have to set him up on the system. The unique employee number जो कि HR ने दिया है that must be entered into the payroll system before the employees can be added. On a monthly basis, an exception report relating to changes to the payroll standing data is produced and reviewed by the payroll manager who evidences this review. मतलब अगर ये यूनिक कोड HR से मुझे नहीं मिला तो मैं एक एम्प्लॉय को पेरोल पे सेट नहीं कर सकती. सो इज़न्ट दिस अ वेरी गुड कंट्रोल दैट द कंपनी हैज़. मतलब फिक्टिशियस एम्प्लॉयज़ को मैं पेरोल पे रख ही नहीं सकती क्योंकि टू admit an employee in the payroll system, I need to have that unique identification number. So the next point I have is unique employee number. Okay. All new employees are assigned a unique employee number by HR. The payroll system is unable to process new joiners without inclusion of the unique employee number. इसकी वजह से क्या होगा? Without that number you cannot set up an employee in the system. इसकी वजह से क्या होगा? As payroll staff are unable to set new joiners without the employee number, from the joiners form, it reduces to what? Fictitious employees being set up on the system. It reduces the risk of fictitious employees being set up by payroll. Abhi, this is what the company is telling you that we are doing this, we are doing that, एज एन ऑडिटर हाउ विल यू टेस्ट कि ये कंट्रोल ठीक से हो रहा है कि नहीं हो रहा? क्या करोगे? बेस्ट मैं आपको बोलूँ, attempt to put in an employee in the payroll system without the identification number. The system should reject it. If the system rejects it, but if the system doesn't reject this, that means whatever the company is saying is false. So how will you test? Attempt to add a new joiner to the payroll system without a unique employee number. The system should reject this addition. Okay? Now see this line. On a monthly basis, on a monthly basis, an exception report relating to changes to the payroll standing data is produced and reviewed by the payroll manager who evidences his review. So every month a review of exception report is done, right? And he also evidences his review. मतलब how after उसने रिव्यू दिया है वो अपना साइन भी करता है एज अ प्रूफ कि मैंने रिव्यू किया है. Now this is a very good control by the company, right? So we can write about that review of exception report. So you have to write the heading for every pointer. Review of exception report. On a monthly basis, an exception report of changes to payroll standing data is produced and reviewed by the payroll manager. Okay? इसकी वजह से क्या हो रहा है? If there is any unauthorized amendments, then they are addressed quickly because the standing data is reviewed every month. Yes, so if there is any unauthorized work that is happening, it will quickly be caught by the payroll manager. So इसकी वजह से क्या होगा? This ensures that any unauthorized amendments to standing data are identified and investigated on a timely basis so that the data used when the payroll is run is valid and accurate. दिस इज़ वॉट द कंपनी इज टेलिंग यू, बट एज एन ऑडिटर हाउ विल यू टेस्ट कि ये जो हो रहा है वो सच में हो रहा है कि नहीं. So the payroll manager evidences his review, right? For a sample of exception reports, you can pick samples of exception reports and check for signature if they are really reviewed by the payroll manager या फिर company ऐसे ही कुछ भी बोल रहा है. So your test of controls, select a sample of monthly exception reports and review for evidence of review and follow up of any unexpected changes by the payroll manager. Yeah, this paragraph. Employee hours worked and their hourly wage rates are preset into the system. That means which automatically calculates the gross and net pay along with relevant deductions and generates employee pay slips. सिस्टम में सब कुछ रेडी है, आपको सिर्फ आवर्स डालने हैं उसमें. आवर्स डालने के बाद वो ऑटोमेटिकली आपका पेमेंट कैलकुलेट करेगा. कोई भी अगर डिडक्शन है लाइक TDS और एनीथिंग वो काट के आपको पे स्लिप दे देगा. सब सिस्टम जनरेटेड है. द पेरोल सुपरवाइजर सिलेक्ट्स अ सैम्पल ऑफ द पे स्लिप्स, रीपरफॉर्म्स द ग्रॉस टू नेट पे कैलकुलेशंस एंड इन्वेस्टिगेट्स एनी डिस्क्रिपेंसीज. मतलब क्या कंपनी क्या कर रहा है, दे आर नॉट जस्ट रिलाइंग ऑन द सॉफ्टवेयर, बट सॉफ्टवेयर से जो कैलकुलेट होके आता है सब लोगों की सैलरी, उसको सैम्पल बेसिस पे सिलेक्ट करके वापस एक बार रिकैलकुलेट करते हैं टू मेक श्योर कि सिस्टम तो कोई मिस्टेक नहीं कर रहा, राइट. सो इफ़ दे आर कैलकुलेटिंग पे फॉर 100 एम्प्लॉयज़ वाया द सिस्टम, सिर्फ आवर्स डालने हैं, वो ऑटोमेटिकली कैलकुलेट करेगा. वो 100 में से वो लोग सैम्पल चूज़ कर रहे हैं एंड चेक कर रहे हैं कि मैन्युअली एंड ऑटोमेटिकली आंसर कम्स द सेम. दैट मीन्स द सिस्टम इज़ प्रॉपर. This is a very good control by the company that they are just not relying on the automation, but they are doing manually to make sure that the automation is proper. So this is the next point. Recalculation of gross to net. Okay, so the payroll supervisor selects a sample of payslips and recalculates the gross to net pay calculations compares the result to output from the payroll system. So they are comparing manual calculation and automatic calculation. Output from the payroll system, that is automatic calculation, and investigates any discrepancies. Okay. इसके वजह से अभी क्या होगा, नेक्स्ट लाइन, दिस रिड्यूसेस द रिस्क that the automated system generates errors ड्यूरिंग द पेरोल प्रोसेसिंग। मतलब अगर ऑटोमेशन में कोई एरर भी है वो भी सॉल्व होगा, क्योंकि हम लोग सैम्पल बेसिस पे मैन्युअली भी कैलकुलेट करके देख रहे हैं कि सिस्टम में कोई एरर तो नहीं। यस, ड्यूरिंग द पेरोल प्रोसेसिंग। Any errors would be identified on a timely basis to prevent wages being over or underpaid. Okay, so this is what the company is telling us कि हम लोग ऐसे कर रहे हैं, हम लोग वैसे कर रहे हैं, but we are auditors, हम तो सुनेंगे नहीं, हम तो हमारी खुद की रिसर्च करेंगे कि सच में भाई कंपनी ऐसे कर रही है या नहीं। so उसके लिए हम लोग क्या करेंगे, अगर ग्रॉस टू नेट पे का कैलकुलेशन सच में हुआ है तो वो कैलकुलेशन हमको दिखेगा, एविडेंस दिखेगा, तो चेक करो एविडेंस है कि नहीं फॉर अ सैम्पल, सी इफ द एविडेंस इज देयर ऑफ द कैलकुलेशन। यस, सो review the monthly pay slips sampled by the payroll supervisor for their signature for evidence of the review of calculations has been undertaken। और क्या कर सकते हो, you can recalculate for a sample of monthly payrolls the gross and net pay and compare to the payroll system and discuss if there are any discrepancies to the payroll supervisor। So for a sample of monthly payrolls reperform the gross to net pay calculations and compare to the payroll system discuss any discrepancies with the payroll supervisor। Okay, 3 more to go. Before that we take a break of 5 minutes. Okay, so next one we have is the fifth one. So let's see where we stopped. Purchases. Okay, the company has a purchasing department based at its head office. When raw materials are required, the production supervisor submits a requisition form to the purchasing department. A multi-part purchase order is generated, and the purchasing manager authorizes all orders up to $5,000 and anything over $5,000 is authorized by purchasing director. So इसकी वजह से एक अच्छी बात क्या है इस कोई भी अगर आपको एक खर्चा करना हो $5,000 के नीचे तो दैट विल रिक्वायर एन ऑथराइजेशन बाय द पर्चेसिंग मैनेजर, और $5,000 के ऊपर अगर आपको कोई खर्चा करना है सो दैट विल रिक्वायर एन ऑथराइजेशन बाय द पर्चेसिंग डायरेक्टर. सो इससे क्या होगा इस कोई भी बंदा अननेसेसरी स्पेंडिंग नहीं करेगा. ओके, अननेसेसरीली दे विल नॉट स्पेंड द मनी बिकॉज इफ दे हैव टू स्पेंड even less than 5,000 or more than 5,000 they have to take authorization of people. So without authorization they cannot spend anything. Okay, that is one thing. And personal use के लिए अगर कुछ लेना है तो भी नहीं ले सकते क्योंकि authorization चाहिए. So this is a very excellent control, so we can write about that. So give the heading authorization of purchase orders. So purchase orders up to $5,000 are authorized by the purchasing manager and above $5,000 by the purchasing director. ओके, ये इतना है. अभी इसके वजह से क्या हो रहा है, this ensures that goods are only purchased which are required by Swift Company and relate to genuine business expenses. Okay? अभी ये हमको कंपनी बोल रहा है कि हम ऐसे कर रहे हैं, हम ऐसे ऑथराइज कर रहे हैं, वैसे ऑथराइज कर रहे हैं, बट वी आर ऑडिटर्स, वी हैव टू टेस्ट अगर ये सच में हो रहा है कि नहीं. So below 5,000 requires authorization of manager and above 5,000 requires director. So on a sample basis, select a sample of the purchase order below 5,000 and see अगर उसके पास authorization है of the purchasing manager. फिर एक sample ले लो above 5,000 and see above 5,000 पे purchasing director की authorization है कि नहीं. तो इससे पता चलेगा कि जो भी कंपनी हमको बोल रही है वो सही बोल रही है या नहीं. So that is testing a control. So select a sample of purchase orders and review for evidence of authorization in accordance with authorization limits. And agree this to the appropriate signature, like किसने authorize किया है उसका signature, on the approved signatories list. Now we have only 2 points left, 6th and 7th. अभी जब क्वेश्चन में they have asked you to find out 7, आपको मे बी 10 मिलेंगे. So now select the best ones. Okay. So we for your. The warehouse team processes goods received from supplier. They agree the goods received to the purchase order and check the quantity and quality of goods. On completion of those checks, a goods received note (GRN) is produced. One copy of the GRN is then signed and filed in the warehouse, and another copy is taken to finance department. Now what happens here is a payable clerk logs the purchase invoices in batches of 20. So जितने भी purchase invoices हैं उनके 20-20 के batches कर रखे हैं. Okay, 20-20 के batches into the detailed purchase listing using control totals. A batch control sheet is completed for each set of 20 invoices and the clerk signs to evidence that the checks are undertaken. So this is a very good control. उन्होंने क्या किया है सब जो purchase invoices है उनको 20-20 के group में divide किया है. So it becomes easier to check. Okay, so that is one control. It becomes easier to total it also. So control totals on purchase invoices. Okay, so purchase invoices are lodged into the detailed list of purchases in batches utilizing control totals. So इससे क्या होगा? Because of this, utilizing control totals ensures both completeness and accuracy over the input of purchase invoices. And if the invoices are not input completely and accurately, then what? Payables will be misstated. This is what the company is telling you, that we are making batches of 20 and we are doing this, we are doing that. How will you agree to that? For every 20, they are totaling it and putting an evidence signature. For every 20, they are totaling it and putting a signature. So what you will do, you will select a sample, you will go and check that 20 and you will evidence and check for the signature. So select a sample of control total sheets and review for evidence of control totals being utilized and the clerk's signature. So signature is like an evidence. Okay. Then from this para, supplier statement reconciliations are performed on a monthly basis. All differences are fully investigated and the financial controller reviews these reconciliations. Invoices are paid in accordance with the supplier's credit terms. The finance director authorizes the bank transfer payment list for suppliers, having first agreed the amounts to be paid to supporting documentation and having reviewed the list for duplicate payments. Auditors are required to document a company's accounting and internal control system as a part of the audit process. 3 methods available for documenting are what we saw. Now, supplier statement reconciliations are performed on a monthly basis. Whenever there are reconciliation performed, any errors or any missing balances are quickly identified. So this is an amazing control that this reconciliations are performed every month. So write about that. So supplier statement reconciliations. Okay, supplier statement reconciliations are undertaken on a monthly basis. And these are reviewed by the financial controller. This ensures, इसकी वजह से क्या होगा, any errors in the recording of purchases and payables are identified and corrected in a timely manner and therefore that payables are complete and accurate. Okay, this is what the company is telling you, that we are doing this, we are doing that. How will you test that it is really happening? They are saying reconciliations are done every month, so you check the file of reconciliations and see if it is actually done every month. So review the file of reconciliations to ensure that they are being performed on a regular basis and that they have been reviewed by a responsible official. So that completes your 7 points and that completes your entire question of Swift company. Okay, so once I click on confirm, this is my answer that I have written. See your answer, and ये है स्टैंडर्ड आंसर. तो स्टैंडर्ड आंसर से आप अपना आंसर कंपेयर कर सकते हो एंड देख सकते हो वेयर यू स्टैंड इन द कॉम्पिटिशन. ओके, सो दैट वाज अबाउट द फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन that we solved for today. Now before doing the second question, I'll take a break of 5 minutes and then we'll do a similar question. यहाँ से सिलेक्ट करेंगे हम लोग. ओके. Okay, so the next question that we have, this one. Now this is a 30 marker. Sorry, this is a 20 marker. We are not going to do the first part that you do for self-study. We're going to do the main part, which is 8 deficiencies and recommendations. Now in this you have to identify the problems in internal control, the problems in cash receipt and payment system, and give a recommendation on how these problems can be improved. So me as an auditor, I'll find out 8 deficiencies and give a recommendation on how the company can improve these problems. So I will do the B part. So this is a dependent type of question. So let's read the question. First, read the requirement. Identify and explain 8 deficiencies in Chamomile Company's cash receipts and payment system and provide a recommendation to address each of these issues. Address each of these deficiencies. It is 1 July 20x5. Chamomile Company operates 6 restaurant and bar venues which are open 7 days a week. The company's year end is 31 July 20x5. You are the audit supervisor reviewing the control documentation in relation to the cash receipts and payment system in preparation for the interim audit, which will involve visiting a number of venues as well as the head office. The company has a small internal audit department based at the head office. The purchasing department based at the company's head office is responsible for ordering food and beverages for all 6 venues. In addition, each venue has a petty cash float of $400 held in the safe, which is used for the purchase of sundry items. When making purchases of sundries, employees are required to obtain the funds from the restaurant manager, purchase the sundries, and return any excess money and the receipt to the manager. At any time, the petty cash sum held by the receipts should equal the float of $400, but it has been noted by the company's IA department that on some occasions this has not been the case. Each venue has 5 cash tills, that is cash registers, to take payments from customers. 3 are located in the bar area and 2 in the restaurant area. Customers can pay using either cash or a credit card, and for any transactions, either the credit card vouchers or cash are placed in the till by the employee operating the till. To speed up the payment process, each venue has a specific logon code which can be used to access all 5 tills and is changed every 2 weeks. At each venue, at the end of the day, the tills are closed down by the restaurant manager, who counts the total cash in all 5 tills and the sum of the credit card vouchers, and these totals are reconciled with the aggregate daily readings of sales taken from each till. Any discrepancies are noted on the daily sales sheet. The daily sales sheet records the sales per the tills, the cash counted, and the total credit card vouchers, as well as any discrepancies. These sheets are scanned and emailed to the cashier at the head office at the end of each week. Approximately 30% of Chamomile Company's customers pay in cash for their restaurant or bar bills. Cash is stored in the safe at each venue on a daily basis after the sales reconciliation has been undertaken. Each safe is accessed via a key which the restaurant manager has responsibility for. Each key is stored in a drawer of the manager's desk when not being used. Cash is transferred to the bank via daily collection by a security company. The security company provides a receipt for the sums collected, and these receipts are immediately forwarded to head office. The credit card company remits the amounts due directly into Chamomile Company's bank account within 2 days of the transaction. At head office, on receipt of the daily sales sheets and security company receipts, the cashier agrees the cash transferred by the security company has been banked for all venues. She agrees the cash per the daily sales sheets to bank deposit slips and to the bank statements. The cashier updates the cash book with the cash banked and details of the credit card vouchers from the daily sales sheet. On a monthly basis, the credit card company sends a statement of all credit card receipts from the 6 venues which is filed by the cashier. Every 2 months, the cashier reconciles the bank statements to the cash book. The reconciliations are reviewed by the financial controller, who evidences her review by signature, and these are filed in the accounts department. All purchases of food and beverages for the venues are paid by the bank transfer. At the relevant payment dates, the finance director is given the total amount of the payment list which he authorizes. So now let's plan the answer. Deficiencies means what do you feel are problems in the system? Now from here it starts, okay? So the purchasing department based at the company's head office is responsible for ordering food and beverage for all the 6 venues. Each venue has a petty cash float, that is a cash of $400 which is removed separately for any purchase of any sundry items, like any small item, so you can go and take cash from that. But when you're making the purchase, you have to get permission from the restaurant manager. You have to take money from him, go buy the thing, submit the bill to the manager, and give him the remaining amount. That is, whatever change is remaining, you have to pay him back. But at any time, the petty cash sum held at receipt should equal to 400. But there is no log maintained of why you're spending that or for what reason it is you're doing that. So this could be as a result of sundry items being purchased without the relevant receipt or voucher being written. And because of this, the cash can be misappropriated, that is used for wrong reasons. So because of that, the first problem is petty cash differences. Petty cash differences. Each restaurant maintains a petty cash float of $400, and at any point in time, the receipts and funds present should equal the float. It has been noted That IA means what? Internal audit. Internal audit department it has been noted by the internal audit department that on occasions there are differences due to the fact that no log is maintained of petty cash request. ओके एंड इसकी वजह से क्या हो सकता है? देयर इज़ अ पॉसिबिलिटी that the cash is being misappropriated by staff members, or they can use this cash for non-business related items or being spent on non-business related items. So what will as an auditor you recommend the company to do कि वो लोग ऐसा क्या कर सकते हैं कि उनका ये प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हो जाए? बिकॉज यहाँ पे हम लोग प्रॉब्लम्स आइडेंटिफाई कर रहे हैं. So what they can do on a weekly basis, the restaurant manager should reconcile the petty cash and if any receipts are missing, these should be followed up with the relevant employee if the cash is missing. Then it should be investigated further with employees. So this is the recommendation that we as auditors can provide. Second, every venue, each venue, there are 6 venues, and at every venue there are 5 cash tills. Okay, each venue has 5 cash tills, that is cash registers to make payments from customers. 3 are located in the bar area and 2 in the restaurant area. Customers can pay using either cash or a credit card, and for any transactions, either the credit card voucher or cash are placed in the till by the employee operating the till. To speed up the payment process, each venue has a specific logon code which can be used to access all 5 tills and is changed every 2 weeks. So till मतलब क्या? आप जब मैकडोनल्ड्स में जाते हो तो वो कोड डाल के she opens that till and she gives you the change. Okay, so they also have same thing. At every location they have 5 tills. Yes, the password for all 5 tills at a location is the same and the password is changed every 2 weeks. So इसमें deficiency क्या है is that if one of the employee comes to know the password of one of the till, he knows that for all the tills that is the same password. So this is one deficiency. And second, if an employee comes to know about the password today, he gets 2 weeks of time to conduct the fraud because the password is changed after 2 weeks. Second deficiency, yes, because of that what will happen is cash can easily be robbed because एक till का password मिल गया तो सभी tills के लिए वही है एंड वो चेंज होगा 2 वीक्स के बाद. सो तब तक के टाइम में वो लोग कुछ भी कर सकते हैं. दे कैन मिस अप्रोप्रिएट विद द कैश. सो दैट इज़ द सेकेंड वन, दैट इज़ एक्सेस टू टिल्स. और वन मोर थिंग इज़ सभी एम्प्लॉयज़ को एक्सेस है टू द टिल. तो अगर इफ़ देर इज़ एनी कैश लॉस और एनी मिस अप्रोप्रिएशन, इट विल बी डिफ़िकल्ट टू आइडेंटिफाई कि पहले तो कौन से टिल से कैश गया है और कौन से एम्प्लॉय ने उसको लिया है. So access to tills. To speed up the cash payment by customers for each venue, the tills have the same logon code and these codes are changed every 2 weeks. ठीक है, इसके वजह से क्या होगा, in the event of cash discrepancy, arising in the tills, it would be difficult to ascertain which employee may be responsible, as there is no way of tracking. समझ रहे हो? Who used the till? Who used which till? There is no way of tracking the same. And इसके वजह से क्या होगा? This could lead to cash being easily misappropriated. Okay, so इसके बारे में what recommendation we can give कि मतलब सभी यूज़ कर रहे हैं, कोड भी सेम है, तो कौन से एम्प्लॉई ने फ्रॉड किया है वो पता भी नहीं चल रहा है. तो हम लोग क्या कर सकते हैं, गिव एवरी एम्प्लॉई अ यूनिक लॉग ऑन कोड. तो इससे हमको पता चलेगा कि फ्रॉड किसने किया है. So each employee should be provided with a unique logon code and this is required to be entered when using the tills. ठीक है. Now this paragraph. At each venue, at the end of the day, the tills are closed down. So every venue has 5 tills. So at the end of the day, every venue, all 5 tills are closed down by the restaurant manager, who counts the total cash in all 5 tills and the sum of the credit card vouchers, and these totals are reconciled with aggregate daily recordings of sale. Any discrepancies are noted on the daily sales sheets. तो ये क्या करता है, वो टोटल करता है और टोटल को रिकनसाइल करता है. And if there are any problem in the reconciliation, we do not know the problem is arising from which till, because what he's doing is taking total of all 5 tills and he's reconciling with aggregate. But if there are any discrepancies in the total, we do not know the mistake is coming from which till. Is it coming from till number 1? Is it coming from till number 2? Is it coming from till number 3? That we are not aware of. So in that situation, what will we do? He has to actually do it individually, right? But he's aggregating it and then doing it. So that makes it more difficult. So the next discrepancy or deficiency in the system is that tills are reconciled in total. So tills reconciled in total. Okay. The reconciliations of the tills to the daily sales reading are performed in total for all 5 tills at each venue rather than for each till. Actually, they should be doing it for each till, but they're doing it for the entire venue. That is all 5 tills together aggregated. And इसकी वजह से क्या problem होगा? This means that when exceptions arise, it will be difficult to identify which till caused the difference, because हमको नहीं पता कौन से till की वजह से this difference has come. Therefore, employees may require further till training or may have undertaken fraudulent transactions. Okay. So what can be your recommendation for this? ये problem का solution कैसे होगा? You can say that please undertake reconciliation for individual till so that आपको पता चलेगा कहाँ पे problem है, कौन से till में, क्योंकि अगर वो पता नहीं चला तो same problem will be continued next year also. Yes. So the reconciliations should be undertaken on individual till by till basis rather than in aggregate. And any discrepancies noted should be investigated immediately. Okay. So at each venue, at the end of the day, the cash is counted by the manager. It is reconciled by the manager. Any discrepancies are noted on daily sheets by the manager. These sheets are scanned and emailed to the cashier again by the manager. So isn't it too much responsibility on the shoulder of the manager? And since there is no segregation of duties in this part, the manager can easily conduct a fraud because he's alone who's doing the totals also, he's alone who's doing the reconciliations also, he's alone who's finding out the discrepancies also, he's alone who is scanning and emailing it also. So it's a very easy playground for him to conduct fraud. So that is a issue. So that is deficiency. And what can be your recommendation? There should be division of responsibility. Maybe hire an assistant who can do the counting and everything, and then the main work can be done by the manager. So that is the next point. So we can name it as lack of segregation of duties. Okay. The cashing up of tills along with recording of any cash discrepancies is undertaken by just one individual. Who is he? The restaurant manager, right? He's the only person who's undertaking that. So what can happen because of that? As there is no segregation of duties, the restaurant manager would fraudulently or by error record total sales as per each till, incorrectly leading to incorrect identification of discrepancies. Okay. अभी इसके लिए आपका what will be your recommendation कि क्या करना चाहिए? There should be segregation of duties. So you can directly write the cashing up process. Should be undertaken by two individuals together, maybe an assistant manager and a manager. So ideally an assistant manager and the restaurant manager. One should count the cash and other should record it. So that will be better, and the possibility of doing the fraud also reduces. So Now next we have is, these sheets are scanned and emailed to the cashier at head office at the end of each week. Now all the sheets are aggregated together and sent at the end of each week. So the sheets are too much. So even if there is any missing sheet, it will not be identified because they are piling it up for the entire week and then sending the sheets. So इससे अच्छा क्या कर सकते हैं, per day का sheets भेज सकते हैं. Yes, it will be better. Per day sheets, easier. And they can also numerically number the sheets. So like in the order of 1, 2, 3, 5. So if 4 is missing, it will be easily identified. So what your recommendation can be, first of all, you can numerically number them and send it every day. So your work will become easier. Because like piling it up together for the entire week and then sending it up becomes a little risky. Okay. So the fifth one is risk of incomplete sales sheet. Okay. Daily sales sheet are scanned and emailed to head office on a weekly basis. Because of this क्या होगा, there is a possibility that some sales sheets could be misplaced by the restaurant manager. And due to this, what will happen? This will result in incomplete sales and cash receipts data being recorded into the accounting system. So इसका recommendation क्या दे सकते हैं हम लोग? As I told you, numerically number and daily sheets should be sent. So write that. Daily sheets for each venue should be sequentially numbered and remitted to head office on a daily basis. And at head office, they should run a sequence check to easily identify any missing controls. So at head office, for sequence check, should be undertaken on a regular basis to identify any missing sheets and any gaps should be investigated further. Okay. Now next. Approximately 30% of Chamomile Company's customers pay in cash for their restaurant or bar bills. Yes, 30% are paying in cash. So we are getting real cash into the business. Now, cash is stored at a safe in the venue on a daily basis after the sale reconciliation has been taken. For every safe, there's a key in which the cash is kept. Via a key, which is the restaurant manager's responsibility. So the cash is stored in a safe. The safe has a key. Each key is stored in the drawer of the manager's desk when not being used. So imagine you're keeping the key just in the drawer. Anybody can access that, even though cash is transferred to the bank via daily collection, but within the day, the key is just kept. So anybody can take the key, open the this thing, and take the cash. So isn't it a deficiency? Because cash you're keeping so safe, but the key you're keeping anywhere. It is like you're locking the house at night and the key you're keeping out for the chore to come and open your house. Okay, so the next problem is security of cash. My god, whatever answer we have written, it got deleted by mistakenly. It sometimes happens. So this was the 6th point or the 6th, I think. So let's continue. So shit. Sometimes when you just swipe it more, no, the page just gets deleted and your question goes. It's okay. So the next one we have is security of cash. So cash is stored in a safe at each venue, and the restaurant manager stores the safe key in a drawer of their desk when not in use. Although every day you're keeping the cash in the bank, but within the day it can be misappropriated. So next point is although the cash is banked on a daily basis, there could still be significant sum of cash on site each day, on a particular day. And because you're keeping the key anywhere in a drawer, there is a risk of significant cash losses due to theft if access to the safe key is not carefully controlled. Okay, so what can be your recommendation for this problem? I will give you one easy idea. Instead of keeping a lock, a key, keep a digital lock with a password, and the password should be known only to the manager. Simple. Yes, so that is a recommendation. The current key lock safe should be replaced with a safe with digital code. Only authorized personnel should have the code, as I told you, which should be updated on a regular basis. Now we just require 2 more. So at head office, on receipt of the daily sales sheet and security company receipts, the cashier agrees the cash transferred by the security company has been banked for all venues. She agrees the cash per the daily sales sheet to bank deposit slips and to the bank statement. तो कैश को वो रिकनसाइल कर रही है, बट क्रेडिट कार्ड स्टेटमेंट को नोबडी इज रिकनसाइलिंग. And on a monthly basis, the credit card company sends a statement of all credit card receipts for 6 venues, which is filed by the cashier. So credit card statement is not reconciled. The cashier is not checking that payments made by credit card have resulted in cash being received by Chamomile. ये credit card payments है, actually आपको cash मिला है कि नहीं है, कहाँ पे भी लिखा नहीं है कि ये हो रहा है. So that is one more deficiency, that credit card statements are not reconciled. They are just filed. They are not reconciled. So that is the next deficiency. Credit card statements not reconciled. Okay. The cashier is not checking that payments made by credit card have resulted in cash being received by the company, Chamomile company. The credit card statements are not reviewed or reconciled. They are just filed away. So what can be the recommendation of the same? How will you recommend that? Actually, the reconciliation should be done for credit card also, like you're doing for the cash, because 30% is cash but 70% is received via credit card. So that is also equally important. So the cashier should reconcile the credit card vouchers per restaurant to the monthly statement received from the card company. Okay. And then last one, 8th one. Every 2 months, the cashier reconciles the bank statement. Now, bank statement is also reconciled every 2 months. 2 months is a very big time. Ideally, statements should be reconciled every month. Because if there is any problem that you come to know today, that will be reconciled after 2 months. So, it will be too late. Yes, so that is one more deficiency, and the recommendation for that is reconciliation should be done every month. So, the last point we have is infrequent bank reconciliations. Okay. The bank reconciliations are only carried out every 2 months. The bank reconciliations, next line, if not performed regularly, इससे क्या होगा? It will not be effective at identifying fraud and error on a timely basis. So what will be your recommendation? As I told you, every month at least you should carry on the reconciliations. So the bank reconciliations should be performed on a monthly basis rather than every 2 months, and evidence signature and the same should be evidenced. Okay, so once you confirm the answer, you get your standard answer. Control deficiencies and recommendations. With that, we complete this particular question. I hope you guys enjoyed this session. Tomorrow we're going to study substantive procedures, which is again a very important topic. A lot of people think that substantive will not come and all that. It is very important. Tomorrow I will teach you that. Okay. Thank you so much for attending this lecture. I hope it helped.